Convert. My name is Chelsea Kaufman, and I'll be moderating our webinar today. I'm an Associate Client Manager here at Change.org, where I work alongside the client service team, organization, and develop email strategies to advocates and donors. With me today are two fantastic speakers going to share on how to improve then how to tackle and finally, how to track the success of your fundraising campaigns so you're never wondering what did. With us, we have Nick Barbieri, Strategic Consultant at Charity Dynamics, as well as Amanda Luther, Client Manager at Change.org. I'm going to give Nick and Amanda each a moment to introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it. Nick, would you like to start?
Great, thank you, Chelsea. And I think we are having a few audio issues on the Change side, so we will take a look into that. But I am Nick Barbieri, and I am a consultant at Charity Dynamics. We're based in Austin, Texas, and we help clients with across-the-board causes to leverage technology and incorporate best practices for better fundraising results. A few of my favorite things to talk about are email marketing and content, so I'm excited for a discussion with all of you today, so thanks for joining.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Amanda Luther, Lead Client Manager at Change.org's DC office. I oversee a team of client managers and work closely with our clients and partners to create campaigns that help them recruit passionate new advocates and donors.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Amanda and Nick. Before diving into things, here's a quick outline of how we'll be structuring our presentations today. Amanda is going to start us off with her expertise on strategy to recruit the ultimate new supporters for your organization. This section will answer questions such as, how do we design a campaign that attracts supporters? And beyond that, how do we attract the right kind of supporters? And how do we connect with people right away to draw them in? Nick will then take us through tips for year-round cultivation to set you up for success in 2016. Nick will answer questions such as, what are some good tips to segment artists? And how can we make use of an integrated content calendar? We'll then close it out with how to measure the success of your campaigns, which Amanda and Nick will both speak to. We'll have about 20 minutes for Q&A after Amanda and Nick have presented, so be sure to enter any questions you may have in the chat box in ReadyTalk, and we'll answer those later on. Additionally, we'll be using the hashtag #AcquireConvert, which you can see on the bottom left of each slide in case you're tweeting along with us. With that, I will hand it off to Amanda to get us started.
All right, thank you, Chelsea. So sorry for the technical difficulties so far. It's quite odd. Chelsea and I are actually sharing the same phone, so I hope that it continues to work all right when I'm speaking. But anyway, so for today, we know that the majority of folks on the line today are looking at our, having some more technical difficulties. I'm going to continue along, but I'm assuming that folks looking at today at the slide right now are probably thinking ahead to 2016 feels like 100 miles away. You're probably in the middle of your end of year fundraising right now, and for some of you, this is the time of year where you raise 30% or more of your fundraising revenue. If that sounds like you, keep an ear out for tips that you can implement now that will help boost your end of year results. And for those of you who are already planning your 2016 growth, leverage today's insights to plan ahead for maximum ROI. All right, so it all starts with a solid recruitment strategy. A lot of the work that we do on my team at Change.org involves designing campaigns that inspire supporters to want to learn more about the cause and to take action.
Amanda, really quickly before you go through your bullet points, I do want to say that while Amanda's covering acquisition in particular to start us off, I do want to say that I don't think most of these best practices are isolated to acquisition and Change.org. So if you are on the line for that end-of-year focus, just keep an ear out for these because they're pretty universal for your campaigns year-round.
Great point. Ideally, whether you're recruiting new supporters on change.org or engaging with existing supporters through your own media channels, the strategy behind your campaign should, 1, spotlight an issue, 2, grab the heartstrings of your audience and make the issue resonate, and 3, make it resonate so much that your supporters are inspired to help, whether that means signing up to learn more, taking action, or making a donation. So how just do we do that? Again, this is going to come across as specific to change.org because it is one of our campaign examples, but in reality, each of these takeaways can easily be applied elsewhere. First, make the issue or your cause relate on a personal level by featuring a personal story. Drill down to what's tangible on a scale that one can affect impact. For example, in this case with the American Diabetes Association campaign from change.org, I, as an individual, might not be able to help 30 million Americans with diabetes, but I can help Bella. So it's her personal story that really draws me in. You always want to optimize your content for the space that you have. In this case with the change.org sponsored campaign, I know that below the headline of the campaign, beside the image, I have a space of 300 characters, including spaces. So I want to use that content right up front to the best of my ability with the most compelling messaging. The click to read more link does work to explore more content, but I'm just leveraging my imagery and my content up front as much as I can. I want to make it visual and take advantage of that imagery. And then I want to feature a actionable, prominent call to action. In this case, that big red button that says sign is prominent. It's easy to click with a finger or a mouse. And then for acquisition purposes, you want your campaign to be 100% permission-based for the opt-in. In this case, the checkbox that says keep me updated on this campaign and others from ADA, this is key to ultimate success. Giving users agency over whether they can opt in or not helps ensure that your new subscribers are looking forward to receiving that next email from you. When it comes to acquiring new supporters, you need to recruit individuals who will be high value to your mission. You want them to be aligned in a number of ways for maximum lifetime value. First, of course, you want the cause area, your issue, to matter to them on a personal level, like we just described. But there's also some additional secret sauce. Be explicit, for example, when your mission is related to a cultural niche.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in on the cultural niche just to give you a real-world example of what we mean. When we say that, is think of organizations like Salvation Army or World Vision. They each have that religious component to their mission, but they do a really great job of being upfront about that religious message, and that helps them build trust in their brand, and that allows supporters to know what they're actually opting into. So that's keeping honesty as part of their brand, and that definitely makes for success.
Awesome, yes. So further, geo-targeting and geolocation. If your organization provides services on the ground in Chicago, Illinois, for example, it probably makes the most sense for you to recruit new supporters in Chicago. With demographics, you might want to look at what your existing donor profile looks like. For example, is there a particular gender that your donors most likely are attributed with? Age, ethnicity, household income, or political party. These are just some examples of ways that you might consider targeting your recruitment based on the ideal demographics. These are just a few qualities that you might want to incorporate into your recruitment strategy, but by no means you don't need to stop there. There's always more that you can learn about your supporters throughout the user engagement experience. For example, I want to learn a little bit more about everyone here in today's audience. Would you be more inclined to want to learn more about Dora's story on the left of your screen or Yuhan's story? And I'm going to actually put a little bit of a poll here where everyone can cast their vote of whether they'd want to learn more about Dora or Yuhan. All right, I see the votes coming in. All right, and I'm going to take us to the results. In this case, Dora is taking the most interest of our audience. And what I think is really compelling is when, in an ideal scenario, and not something that we're leveraging in today's webinar, that poll was all anonymous. But in an ideal scenario, we'd be able to track your poll response, whether you voted for Dora or Yuhan, back to your individual supporter record on the database. We'd be able to segment our audience then into groups of Dora fans and Yuhan fans. What you see here on your screen now is an example of a file containing new supporters who were recruited through change.org for a particular Canadian organization. They were actually running a few campaigns with us at this time, one related to marine animals, one related to dogs, and one related to elephants. And what I have circled here is a source code. So that's what's actually indicating what the original interest area of each new supporter was, so that this organization can segment their audience accordingly. All right, so back to the secret sauce for designing an optimal recruitment campaign. A couple of additional things to keep in mind. First, timely content generates higher conversion rates for our campaigns time and time again. So if you can, tie your issue to something taking place now in the news or in the press, or leverage a sense of urgency based on the calendar or an upcoming deadline. Anytime that you can add urgency, it's going to increase your conversion rates. Make sure you're using a tone and message that Aunt Betty can relate to. So Aunt Betty isn't a scientist, she's not an academic, she's someone who responds to emotion before logic. And then testing is always key to success. Our offline direct mail counterparts have a well-established history of testing their appeals. Online avenues have just as much, if not more, opportunity for testing. At change.org, we test using multivariate testing tools. We'll also often test head-to-head campaigns for our clients.
Yeah, and I would just jump in testing note and say don't test just for the sake of testing. You really want to go in asking yourself what are the most valuable takeaways that you want to get out of that testing. So go into it with a hypothesis that you want to test or a specific insight that you want to learn. A lot of times people have already tested, say, even just subject lines, and they do the same test the next year, and it's like, don't we have a few lessons learned, and can we take it a step further? So you can focus your resources in a way that will actually generate actionable results.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Yeah, and ideally throughout the year, if you're testing consistently, you'll have some of the best insights to leverage for your end-of-year fundraising to make your results the strongest possible. So I already mentioned that source codes can indeed be your best friend or a predetermined group ID in your database. Ultimately, once a supporter has opted into your email program, you want to import them into your CRM or your email tool as quickly as possible so that you can immediately follow up and leverage your audience's initial interest. For a number of CRMs, change.org offers an API integration that will import your new supporters in real time, allowing that immediate outreach to take place through the Welcome series. Tagging your supporters with an appropriate source code in your CRM is going to set you up to leverage a lot of the strategies that Nick is going to take us through next. So Nick, take it away.
Thank you. I will. Your segmentation and stewardship work for those new acquisitions that Amanda has been talking about, it starts from the very beginning. So you're going to want to make sure that you're set up in such a way that you can easily and respectfully welcome those new recruits. Of course, the best way to do that is a welcome series. So if you don't have one, it's time to start thinking about building one out. It's the perfect way to translate impact so you can educate, cultivate, and inspire those new recruits through an automated campaign that you can set up and just let it run on its own. So if you do have an existing welcome series, this is your chance to add in some personalization and conditional content. So for example, Amanda was just discussing acquisition through change. You could add specific content for that group that directly relates to the campaign that actually inspired them to join your list in the first place. So
I'm going to interrupt with a quick fun fact related to welcome emails. First emails in a welcome series that include first name as a dynamic field have a 33% higher lift in open rates.
Yeah, it shows it's important to show people you know and care about them, and a little bit goes a long way. So another great opportunity that the Welcome Series presents is easily moving up that ladder of calls to action. So if you have, like a lot of people have a lot of really great content on their social networks, and there are a lot of really lively and engaging conversations happening over there, the Welcome Series is a perfect chance to introduce them to the fact that there is an engaged community that exists, and they might want to go ahead and head over there and interact and get more out of it. You're going to want to keep other communications in mind when you do just onboard people, so suppress them from the rest. And that means if I came in, I just donated to you, and a week later I get a donation ask, that can seem a little bit insulting. So having that welcome series set up where you know that I've come in through a donation and you're speaking directly to me and welcoming, and I'm not getting anything else or sending out at the time, is a nice, clean way to treat people when they come into your files. I'm going to show a real-world example that I love. This comes from Save the Children, and this isn't their full welcome series, but you can see that they do a great job of translating their impact by literally illustrating it. There's some great visuals like the map that shows exactly where Save the Children is brightening futures for vulnerable children, so that's in the middle there. There's also a really great example of educating constituents in this series. So when you think of Save the Children, you probably think about international relief and aid. But they do so much work in the United States as well, and they were able to use one message in their welcome series to highlight that work in the United States, and that really helps to educate people so they can truly understand the reach of their work and that it might even be closer to home than they realize. Right, so personalization. When it comes to continually strong campaigns throughout the year, personalization is definitely key. Your constituents will feel more connected to you, and the great thing is that a little does go a long way, like I said before. So tweaking an intro paragraph to speak to a specific group will show them that you recognize how they interact with you and how they support you. It's more of that trust and a stronger connection. So everyone probably uses a little bit of the first name personalization, which is great. Another issue area of interest is another great way to conditionalize content. So if you know, say you got them through change, you know they were interested in a specific campaign, you'll always know that and you can speak to it. For end of year, there's a lot of donor, non-donor, the personalization there, so at least starting off of a basis of recognizing that they give to you or they haven't. Service recipient is another thing to keep in mind. Say if you get food services or housing services from people, you'll want to treat those organizations different. And of course, people who have actually interacted with you in a way that they've participated in events or volunteered with you, they're some of your biggest advocates. And making sure that they realize that you know that is a big deal for them.
So a quick nod to Veterans Day and an example of personalizing content. Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, IAVA, does a really smart job of learning about their audience to identify veterans and civilians as they join the file. And then they use their segmentation strategy to influence their fundraising outreach. So for example, veterans will never be solicited with fundraising appeals, whereas their civilian counterparts will receive those fundraising asks.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a perfect example of smart segmentation. Thank you. And before we head into more of a multi-channel discussion, and just for the sake of time today, we're going to keep the focus online. So we'll be touching on email, website, and social media channels specifically. But I do want to hear from everyone again with a quick poll just to get a sense of the room here. So in your year-round communications, I want to know how many of these channels you actually use to communicate your message. So on the next screen, you'll select everything that relates to channels that you do use, and just be honest. So if you don't have a telemarketing campaign, any in-person events, don't select those, but select everything that you use to get your message out over the year, and go ahead and hit submit. All right, just seeing things grow. Yep. So it looks like telemarketing is a little low, but it's really evenly spread across the other channels as these responses are coming in, which is really a great sign that you guys already know what you're doing. And it also proves that there's no denying that we live in that multi-touch, multi-channel world. So the best way to really grasp and get a sense of how all of your channels connect is to get some organization in the system. So I recommend creating an integrated marketing calendar, and this is just a little illustration of something you can do in even less than an hour by hopping into Excel. So you can just jump in and create a few rows representing your communication channels and add in everything on your radar that you'll be messaging out in the upcoming year. So it offers a really nice way to see where you might be able to enhance and connect messaging across channels, where it's already lined up, or where you might need to, say, add in or dial back or even remove something. So say, for instance, you have an end-of-year campaign coming up, but it was looking a little blank, say, in September and October for email, and you might realize that you're not doing any cultivation leading up to end of year, and it's a great time to have a little bit of a cultivation series so people see you again, they have you top of mind, and they're trusting you, and they're feeling good that you're doing things out there in the world, and so by end of year time, they're ready to give to you.
So Nick, go ahead.
I was just going to point out that another example here, just to give more of a sense, is that you can see an in-person events in November column that speaker announced for their in-person event is crossed out. This is maybe they saw that in November they were sending out too much with e-news in the year-end campaign launch and a Thanksgiving cultivation email, and this kind of showed that maybe we'll move around our communications in other areas so our channels line up better and we're not inundating people.
Sorry for interrupting before. And I think that note about just making changes on the fly is actually adds emphasis to what I was going to suggest, because I imagine a lot of people on the phone right now, to manage all of these channels, they have to work across departments with their peers. So I was going to suggest that using a Google spreadsheet for this task could allow everyone to have real-time access and make updates on the fly, and everyone would be looped into those updates as they're being made.
Awesome. Yes, that is a very good point. All right, so let's talk the email channel. So a really obvious statement is that email is still important, which is a good thing. And you're going to want to keep the same awareness of your audience and segmentation tips that we've discussed for your welcome series in mind for all your year-round campaigns.
So particular with this first stat on 60% of your email being read on mobile, of that group, it's reported that 72% of those people will delete an email if it doesn't load correctly on their mobile device in the first 3 seconds. So it really calls for emphasis on mobile readiness.
Yeah, that's a really big deal. So it shows that you really have to meet your audience where they are. So if you're noticing that you have a lot of people opening emails on mobile devices, you're going to want to consider optimizing your emails for those specific devices with truly responsive builds and then really smart, easy call to action. So if I open your email on my mobile, I want to be able to click through with a button and not be able to, move my fingers around my phone and mess things up. So in that same thing, you're going to want to monitor deliverability to make sure you're actually reaching your constituents where they are and you're not triggering spam alerts. So there are a couple of great resources for this. Return Path is one. They have a great deliverability report, and it's also free. Luminate, in their last September release, they made a report by device available in the email campaign section. So you can't go back to find out data on that, but you, moving forward, can pull that report to see who's opening emails on specific devices. And then, of course, the Litmus has always offered a really great service for that as well. For a few end-of-year tips while we're discussing email, one thing is the list note sans HTML. I'm sure a lot of you have tried this out before, but it's a great way to get personal where you have you can have that sense of urgency in the message, so it really highlights that and it makes it more personal because it looks like that kind of plain forward coming from someone you know. It's a great way to call out a deadline that's fast approaching. We'll take a look at an example of that in a second. And then another thing is timing and frequency of send. So you're going to want to play around with that. It's a great thing to test as well. So the email inbox is moving a lot more into that kind of social newsfeed area where you're getting a lot of emails in over the whole day, and you're going to want to stay top of mind. So a lot of people are doing the AM, PM experiments or resend experiments, and same with the day of the week. So a lot of people were afraid of weekends in the past, but we're noticing a lot of success with, say, Sunday sends, where people might be hanging out on their couch with their iPads and have the time to click through and actually read your content and engage and hopefully be inspired to give. All right, so this is an illustration of the lift note or forward treatment that we were just talking about, and this comes from Defenders of Wildlife. So you can see that direct, more intimate feel that uses the aesthetics of a personal email forward up the top. It definitely grabs your attention, and it ups the chances that someone is reading and therefore more likely to actually engage with you. All right. So when it comes to your homepage and landing pages, you're going to want to strive for that echo chamber effect when you're running campaigns. And that means, let's say I get your end of your email, I should recognize the campaign when I go to your website through a lightbox, maybe a homepage slider, if I visit your website later that day or even that week. So again, you're thinking of that multi-touch world. Your campaign message will be familiar to me if I see it like that, and it's clear symmetry that creates that natural sense of trust. And then on those pages, if I haven't received your email, maybe I got to you from a search, you're going to want to make sure there are organic opt-in opportunities across the board there. So if I'm considering hearing more from you when I land on your page, it should be really easy for me to know how to do so. So there are a couple people doing really cool things with this, and I always like to mention Invisible Children because they have this really nice sticky call to action button on their long scroll website where you can keep scrolling, and it's really nice transparent sign up button follows you throughout the page, and it's not annoying, and it's there, so it's just kind of this nice nudge to sign up and hear more from them. The big end of your tip here, of course, is doing a quick donation form audit. See if there's any optimization you can do. We've been talking about the continued growth of mobile, and that's no surprise. So it's got to be easy for your constituents to donate from their phone where they might be reading your email. So just really keep in mind removing the friction there and make it as easy as possible to give. And we do have a nice live example here, and this comes from Boston Children's Hospital Trust. You can see how the desktop donation form seamlessly collapses for both tablet and mobile. So that clear gift array, it's a button treatment, and it beats out those tiny radio buttons you might have seen and you might still have on some of your donation forms. That way there's really that easy click-through process if I'm on a smaller device.
So Nick, when it comes to mobile and tablet and desktop visitors, how does an organization determine where their audience tends to visit them? Is there an easy way to get those kind of metrics?
Sure. Yeah, I would say probably the easiest way is just Google Analytics. So keeping in track of those key performance indicators there to see who's coming to your site and where they're coming from. So seeing the percentage of your mobile audience on Google Analytics and also your top landing pages is a great way to find a place to start. So if you don't have the time for a huge site rehaul, at least you can maybe optimize your top landing pages so people are able to experience those on whatever device they're on.
Cool.
Great. So social media channel, it's such a great place these days for custom audience targeting. They're making that process incredibly easy. So it's really nice that you can actually say you can upload your email list for making sure your content gets into the right news feeds or viewed by the right audiences. So if I have an end-of-year matching gift promotion and I send that out, I could have my target list uploaded to Facebook so that they might see a nice image call out that connects to the campaign. And we actually have a really good example of that as well, and this comes from Riley's Children's Hospital Foundation. And it's a nice email to social echo chamber effect from their end-of-year campaign last year. So they have this really effective emotional personal story of Caitlin, and they were able to take that content and tweak it a bit to be appropriate for Facebook. So it's just a paragraph or one of two sentences. And they were able to push that social post later in the day after the email went out in the morning, and the social post proved to have a really great engagement as well. So a huge number of likes and comments, which is great. And we have a note just if you do those pushes where it's not your regular Facebook post, it's kind of in a sense moving more in the direction of an ad, you're going to want to really just keep in mind that you want to engage and still interact with anyone who is commenting on those. So make sure you're around to actually interact with people and show that you're there.
I love that. Any post, any imagery with babies is always going to convert quite well and get lots of engagement. And so I love this example. An attribution question for you, Nick. Do you have a preference on how to track donations by channel? So for example, to be able to know when the email featuring Caitlin generated a gift, but maybe when the Facebook channel generated a different gift?
Yeah, so I am a big fan of source codes, and to me they are the saving grace during an end-of-year campaign. So you're going to just want to make sure, and this is really easy to do, it's appending a source code to the end-of-year link. So you probably do this in your emails already where you might have a code that says EOI E1 HD, which would be end-of-year email 1 high donors. So a way to kind of map out who's clicking through and donating, and you can tie that donation directly back to where they came from and even what group they're in sometimes. So a good rule, and I like creating source code themes out there in the world, is just put a source code on every single link you put out there into the world. So if you do have the social link, make sure you change that source code to be something like EOI 15 social, so end of year 2015 social. So I know that anything that came through that was part of our social media push. So that answers your question. So we're going to talk a little bit about measuring success, and I'm going to hand it over to Amanda. So trying to actually make sense of your campaign so you can tell your story and learn from what you did.
All right, thank you. So I want to start this section by making sure that we're all familiar. There are a number of CRMs available to nonprofits. For the sake of using a visual illustration on a couple of the following key points, we're actually using the Luminate Online interface as the example. That's Blackbaud's product suite. So your CRM is your technical infrastructure, and you might be using Luminate, you might be using something else. But it allows you to segment your audience into the strategic groups that we've talked about. And then on a micro level, this is also your tool for allowing you to track the value of your supporters individually as well. So in today's world of big data, it's really easy to get overwhelmed with the question of which key metrics we should be tracking and which ones we can allow to move to the back burner. Obviously, your organizations and internal resources are going to navigate how much bandwidth you have to put toward assessing your data. It's going to help you determine which are the important pieces and which pieces you might have more capacity for. But when it comes to recruiting and cultivating new supporters, there are a few minimum viable product metrics that we encourage you to track as the very priorities. First, your engagement trends, or those interactions with your supporters. I'll give it some examples of what those look like in the next slide. I also recommend making sure to track retention over time and how long of a lifespan you have with your supporters before they either fall off the file through unsubscribe or change of email address or otherwise. I'd also recommend creating a strategy for tracking attribution, how much money, how much fundraising dollars you've generated through each channel. And then overall, your acquisition ROI, and that's making sure that you're covering your investment cost in recruiting the new supporters. That return on investment is ROI, and making sure that the lifetime value of those new supporters far exceeds the original investment cost. All right, so as I mentioned with the engagement metrics, engagement trends, so specifically for newly recruited supporters, you can begin tracking early KPIs as quickly as your Welcome Series email deployment. Your email open rates and click-through rates are going to give you a good idea of whether or not your new supporters are interested in your messaging, or if they're not. I would argue that sometimes tracking your highest email open rates and click-through rates is just as important as tracking your low click-through rates. Particularly the low metrics are going to show you where you've maybe missed a mark. Perhaps you failed to include a call to action in an email, which would explain why you don't have the click-through tracker metric to look at. But that was probably a missed opportunity for engagement. So every email you should try to feature at least one prominent call to action that can easily be clicked, again, by a finger on a mobile device or by a mouse on a desktop.
So Amanda, the KPIs you're talking about, they're great for tracking the current campaign that's going out and offers that chance to pivot during the current campaign. But can you speak to how you recommend an organization measure their success beyond that present campaign so that way they can get the bigger picture?
Sure. Yeah. So an organization's email tool should allow them to pull email performance reports on a consistent basis. So you don't have to do it after the full run of a campaign. You can do it message by message and be able to have time for pivoting as needed. And then I would recommend, for comparison's sake, to look at your historic email performance rates so your internal benchmarks, what you're used to seeing with your existing file and their engagement with email, or look at industry benchmark reports like the M&R benchmark report, which isolates average engagement rates by industry vertical, so like animal welfare versus medical research, for example. And they also do isolation by email file size to give you a couple points for comparison of how your metrics might stack up to your peers.
Great. Great. So I'm just going to jump in to talk about engagement factors. And I know that, Amanda, you mentioned these, I think, in a few slides before. But Blackbaud Luminate in particular has a great way of tracking online interactions that's often overlooked. So if you are on there, you're going to want to think about maybe using engagement factors in the future if it might work for you. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to add weight to particular actions in order to find those top supporters that you have. So you can give kind of a point system to the number of email opens or survey responses, advocacy actions, donations that someone takes, and it will add up on their profile to show you what a big supporter they are, which is great. And taking a look at the back end just to give you a sense of what it looks like. Where you set up these engagement factors, you can see the full list of online interactions that you can track and add up. So you can see login and pledges, and then there's even, say, event RSVPs or e-commerce purchases if you do sell stuff online as well.
Yeah, I love this idea of using engagement factors as like a point-based system for identifying your super advocates and your super engagers. Then also to a point that you made earlier, Nick, about email deliverability, engagement factors can be used to identify your non-email openers, or those people who have lapsed or haven't opened your email in the last, let's say, 3 months, because those non-openers might be affecting how your deliverability is being scored by some of the major email providers.
That's a good point, too. And I think that can also play well into helping you create an audience for reactivation campaigns. That's something you want to do down the line to see who's opening your emails. You might be able to drop to. So as far as tracking donations when you're measuring success, I'm sure this is the one reporting element that you are most likely on top of every hour during your campaign. But it's good to have a template or a foundation report to plan how and exactly what key performance indicators you'll be reporting on to track donations. So that way before your campaign launches, you've got everything set up, however you choose to report, whatever works best for you. That way you can kind of fill it in as you move along through the campaign and learn as you go. You're going to want to analyze the giving behavior of one-time donors and repeat donors. One great thing to look at here, an example I like to call out, is if you're taking a look back at your end-of-year campaign and you're noticing that your first and new donors, that number is dropping, but your repeat donors might be picking up the slack, and you might notice that that could be a problem for you in the future. So you're going to want to maybe focus on acquisition strategy in the upcoming year if you're noticing those first-time donors dropping. Another great thing to track is giving amounts as you go through your campaign. So tracking the average gift amount while your campaign has launched and it continues to go. That way you can see if people are giving more. You might want to test a gift array. That way in one email you might send out higher gift amounts and encourage people to up their donation. And if it doesn't work in your test, you can always revert back to your original gift array. As far as the actual reporting, platforms like Luminate, again, make it very easy to report by group for those of you that do have heavily segmented end-of-year campaigns. So in this example you see on the screen, you can see the donation by group report, which is in the fundraising section of Luminate. And in this example, we're reporting on $1 to $99 donors. It's a great way to see how this particular group responded to a particular campaign, and if I might need to switch up my messaging or learn what worked so I can repeat it or build upon it for the future. When it comes to telling the story or really knowing your return on investment, the way we describe it here, how you know you've reached 100% ROI, is that your total donation amount covers the cost of acquiring new supporters. So it's when you make back that money you spent. But in no way does ROI stop at 100%. So with smart engagement with your new supporters over time, you can generate that higher lifetime value, and your long-term gains should exceed your original investment cost.
So I can just chime in here. At change.org, our clients report that on average, their acquisition reaches 100% ROI in roughly 18 months or less. And then anything fundraised from those individuals going forward is in addition to covering their initial investment costs. So I'm actually going to take us over a quick recap of what we just discussed, and that includes, we talked about best practices today for designing a campaign that recruits new supporters who are likely to become your strongest advocates and donors. We walked through smart cultivation strategies that offered meaningful engagement opportunities and helped move those new supporters up the ladder of engagement. We also highlighted a few digital channels available to us, but we see lots of opportunity for integrating online and offline tactics, including direct mail and telefundraising and in-person events. So we hope that you'll incorporate more testing and optimization into your campaign strategies. I know we had a couple of questions that popped up throughout today's webinar about testing, so we'll dig into that in just a moment. And from your reporting efforts, you'll know now which test results to adopt for next year's end-of-year fundraising campaign.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda and Nick. With that, we will open it up to questions. If you haven't put your question into the chat box yet, make sure to stick it in there so we can get it answered. But with that, we will address the questions from the audience. So the first one we had pop up, as Amanda mentioned, is what is an example of multivariate testing? Caitlin says, I know about A/B testing, but multivariate is not familiar.
Great question. I'm happy to field that one. So here at change.org, we run our sponsored campaigns with the added benefit of this multivariate testing. It's specific technology that we have built into our tools. It allows us, for example, to test a campaign running with up to 3 images or up to 3 headlines. And we'll run each of those permutations, each of those versions of the campaign in parallel to one another. And we'll be able to generate insights into which version of the campaign has a higher conversion rate, which one people are opting into at a more frequent basis. So that's kind of our use of multivariate testing, but we're certainly not the only technology platform that leverages it. I've run campaigns, I've worked with folks who've made website design development of new landing pages and have wanted to test those pages to make sure that they're designed in optimal fashion. And in that case, we used a free tool through Google Analytics called Content Experiments. It essentially allows you to post up to 3 or actually more pages at any given time, and Google is going to traffic your website traffic to each of those versions for you and calculate statistical significance. And there's paid tools that you can use to do similar things with your website. Optimizely is one that is really commonly used these days with website optimization.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda. The next question I feel like Nick can hop in on comes from Mary, and she's asking, can you speak to generational divides? Is there a best way to get through to older folks via email?
That is also a great question, and I like this one because I usually hear the opposite of that, which is asking how to better reach out to the millennial audience, so I'm excited about this. I'd say that I would recommend 2 things here. One of them is just to bring back that direct mail culture of testing into your online email world. So if you think your older audience might want to actually read more about what you're doing versus what you usually hear about shortening things and chopping things so that it's short and sweet with one clear call to action, get through the end. I think for an older audience, you might want to do that short versus long content test, or maybe play around with your subject lines to see if maybe you can speak to them in a different way that does get that older engagement up. And then another thing is if you don't have your audience segmented yet or you haven't tried that out, you might want to pick a campaign where you can actually segment your audience by age, that you have groups in your system that you know are certain ages, and you can give them variants of the same message, so you can see exactly how they are interacting with your email and can inform your messaging through there. So I would recommend, again, just testing a few things out, specifically that short versus long content, and then also breaking it out into groups if you can, if you have access to that information on age. That way you can actually watch them perform by group.
Yep, I love that. And building off of that idea of segmenting your older generation of supporters, I'd want to test particularly font size. As I get older, my vision gets worse. I like bigger text, and I can imagine that that might carry over to other folks. So I would give that a shot as well.
Very true.
I love that.
Great point. Thank you so much. The next question I feel like both of you can speak to once again, so I'll let either of you jump in first, but it comes from Samantha. And she's asking, do you recommend against sending an email without any call to action? We send many, this is what is happening with us right now type emails, but no real ask in that feedback.
I would love to jump in on that because I feel very passionate about this. I think we get so lost in our solicitation campaigns, and we're thinking about the goal we need to reach and our resends, and maybe send a PM send, maybe we can ask you in, maybe we can do this, and you forget, and you love your supporters, and you really want to inform them of the impact you're doing, and you love the work you're doing, and you want to share that. So it's just stepping back and reminding yourself. It's like someone saying breathe. It's like you need to remember that you have that cultivation is so important, and you need to make sure that it's in your calendar and has a place and stays there. So I love that you're doing this. I think it's great to just send updates. E-newsletters are a great place for that. Impact reports, annual reports are some of the most, their highest engagement levels are on those emails. So it's even in your end of year campaign, we've noticed in some of ours that the campaigns that do lean more towards that impact report mix with the ask do better anyway. But people want to know, and I think it's great. I would just recommend that you do hopefully have something in there that can send them to your site, maybe to read more, so that they're used to your site and they're interacting on your pages versus some other landing page, and maybe even just promoting other things like social. So there's still a chance there to update them, but give them something else to do or read, and hopefully it's at your home base on your website.
Yeah, I kind of cringe when I get my email performance report after sending out an email and looking at that 0 click-through rate. It doesn't allow me to really have an idea of whether people read that email or engaged with it. So I would definitely want something there for them to click. In the case where this is what's happening with us right now, how great to include that content. And then for more updates like this, visit us on our Facebook feed where we provide regular daily updates, or visit our blog where we have more content related to this. Or as Nick said, go to the website for more. So I think there's always an opportunity to put a click-through in there. And what I would also help emphasize is that some people are button clickers and some are link clickers. So I would format that call to action in both of those ways, even the same call to action, but just format it in both ways, to ensure that you're kind of capturing all of your audience in one manner or another.
Great ideas. Thank you so much, guys. It looks like we have one more question still here from the audience. It comes from Rodrigo, and I feel like, Nick, you could speak to this. And he asks, how do you recommend we determine the audience for our social media ads?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think there are kind of two lenses to look at this. One is in that example we showed in the deck of Riley's where they had the email of Caitlin and it went to social. They also had a great example of targeting an audience through posts where they have an ambassador for their end of year, and it's a local celebrity that's in the football world. So that offers a great chance for targeting because it's easy to target off of that name or that interest and kind of banking off of his celebrity. So if your content has that sort of thing where you can easily pull out elements and interests that you can target on Facebook, that's a good place to start. And then the second point is what we talked about, where you could actually upload your list. So you can stick with your email list that's actually getting your emails, and that way you're doing that echo chamber effect we talked about. And another option is there are services that let you kind of see who is on social and your email file and who isn't. So who do you have on your email file that's not on social yet? And you can use those services to find people that aren't engaging on your social network that maybe should be, and you can get them on there. And that way you're able to kind of grow your audience for ads that are actually getting your messages as well.
Cool. Thank you for that insight, Nick. Before we wrap up, I want to pose one last question to both Amanda and Nick. So I will let them give their feedback. If there is one bit of last-minute year-end fundraising advice you could give to our audience, what would it be?
That is an amazing question. I think, Amanda, you probably know what I'm going to say, but I mentioned this in the deck, and my advice of a last-minute end-of-year campaign tip would be to have that kind of template for reporting as you move forward. So that way you've got the key performance indicators you want to track, and you've got some organization to your reporting. It's so important for as you move through the campaign, if you see somewhere that you might be able to pivot or get some lessons learned before your campaign wraps, it just offers you that great opportunity to get more of a sense of how you're performing before it ends, which is super important. So I would recommend that for sure.
I love that. Yeah, and that allows you to identify messages that are performing quite well that you might want to expand or resend again to anyone who didn't open it the first time, perhaps with a lift note attached to it, like you saw in the example. My last-minute end-of-year advice is, if you have not already, reach out to your CRM or your email tool representative and let them know that you're going to be sending email on your calendar, on your schedule that you have mapped out. You're going to have a lot of competition through your email tool, and you want to make sure that your emails get out when you think they're being sent out. So let them know what that schedule looks like, maybe even the time of day that you're planning for. What you want is to be first in the queue to go out on the days that you've identified.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone for those great questions, and a big thank you once again to Amanda and Nick for taking the time to share their insights with us. We will be sending everyone who registered for today's webinar a recording of the presentation as well as the deck in that, so be sure to keep an eye out for that in your inboxes. If we have any questions that we didn't get to answer today or any other thoughts from the webinar, feel free to reach out to either of the email addresses listed on the slide there, and we will be sure to get you a response as soon as possible. So with that, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We will give you 7 minutes back into your day, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.